Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us.
It's great to be here.
Today we're going pretty deep into Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah.
You guys sent in some really fascinating excerpts about rebirth and the role of consciousness.
Yeah, some really interesting stuff.
These scholars really get into it.
They really do.
It's not just like a casual, oh yeah, you come back as like a frog if you're bad or whatever.
It's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it really dives into like what even IS consciousness.
Where does it come from?
Right, where does it go?
And how does what we do, N&W,
Right.
like impact what happens later
Right.
in the next life or whatever?
It's almost like we're planting these seeds, for our future selves.
Absolutely.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this idea of the two lifetime system is all about.
Yeah.
This idea that what we do in this life has a direct impact on our next life.
Really emphasizes the importance of being mindful.
Right.
Every action, every thought, like plants that seed that's going to bear fruit later on.
Makes you really think twice about like those late night snacks or,
Right, exactly.
But before we get too far ahead, I think it's helpful to kind of ground ourselves in this idea of dependent origination.
Yeah.
Or prachitasmupada.
Yeah.
Can you kind of unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, dependent origination basically just means that every single thing is connected.
Okay.
And each event, each action is both a cause and an effect.
Okay, so like one thing leads to another and then that leads to another.
It's like this giant chain reaction.
Okay.
And it's often depicted as this 12-link chain.
Okay.
Where each link is a different aspect of existence.
So it's not just limited to this life though, right?
No, it continues on and on and on.
Okay, so it links like our past, present, and future.
Exactly.
So where does consciousness fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And actually, these texts offer 3 different ways of thinking about consciousness.
Oh, 3 different ways.
What they call vijñāna.
Ah, okay, break it down for me.
So one idea is that consciousness is tied to our senses.
Okay.
The 5 senses we know and love, and plus our mental awareness.
Okay.
Another view is that it exists as like a single moment.
Okay.
At the point of conception, like this pre-birth consciousness.
Okay.
And then there's the idea of a continuous stream
of
consciousness that just flows through death and rebirth.
So it's like this kind of elusive thing we can't really pin down.
Right.
But what really throws a wrench in the works is this whole debate about whether it's a cause, a result, or both.
It's like a chicken and the egg problem.
Right.
But on a cosmic scale.
Exactly.
And this is where the idea of the 2 lifetime system really comes into play.
Okay, so let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole 2 lifetime system thing.
Imagine it like this. Every action we take, every thought we have is like planting a seed.
Okay.
These seeds are called bija, and they're influenced by our intentions and the state of our minds.
So we're just like walking around planting these seeds constantly.
Right.
Okay.
And they're stored in our subconscious,
Okay.
waiting to sprout.
So then how do they actually sprout into a new life?
So these pijas, these seeds of potential,
Yeah.
they get moistened and brought to fruition in the next life,
Okay.
shaping our predispositions, tendencies, even our physical characteristics.
So it's like we're carrying around this blueprint
Right.
for our next life based on these seeds we've planted.
But it's not a one-to-one thing.
Okay.
It's more like a set of possibilities
Okay.
that unfold based on a really complex interplay of causes and conditions.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that our intentions and the state of our minds kind of influences these seeds.
Yeah,
Does this mean karma plays a role here?
absolutely.
Okay.
Karma is like the fertilizer
Okay.
for those seeds.
Got it.
And remember, karma isn't some kind of punishment reward system.
Right.
It's about the natural consequences of our action.
Okay.
And the way that our choices shape not only our external world, but also our inner world.
So it's not just about what we do, but why we do it?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these seeds being planted.
Right.
And the karma is like the fertilizer.
Right.
What else is influencing how these seeds sprout?
Well, the texts introduce this concept of citta saskara.
Citta saskara.
Think of them as like mental conditioners.
Mental conditions.
Specific factors that shape our consciousness and impact the process of rebirth.
So is this where we get into like meditation and mindfulness?
We'll get there.
Okay.
But these are more fundamental than that.
Okay.
They're like the building blocks of our mental experience.
Okay.
The things that shape our thoughts, emotions, and actions.
So like greed, hatred, delusion.
Exactly. Those are considered unskillful mental factors.
Because they lead to suffering.
Exactly.
Okay.
And keep us trapped in the cycle of rebirth.
Oh, okay, so some Sita Saskar are good and some are bad.
You could think about it like that.
Okay.
Some are like weeds in the mental garden. Okay.
And some are like flowers.
But you said they're connected to karma.
Right. They're both products of past karma and contributors to future karma.
Oh, wow.
So it's this constant feedback loop
Right.
between our actions and our mental states.
So they're really starting to see how this all connects, right?
And all of this is happening within that grand chain reaction of dependent origination.
Yeah, my brain is definitely doing some chain reactions right now.
I feel it.
It's amazing to me how these ancient Buddhist texts just offer this really nuanced and complex view of consciousness and rebirth.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
And one thing that I find so fascinating about Buddhist philosophy is that it's not like this one big system.
Okay.
There are different schools of thought with their own unique interpretations of these core concepts.
So there's not like one right answer.
Right. It's more like this ongoing conversation, this exploration of truth.
So it's dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's evolving. Exactly. And all the debates and disagreements really just show how deep and intellectually rigorous Buddhist thought is.
Okay, so we've got these seeds of consciousness that are being kind of like perfumed by our karma and influenced by these mental conditioners.
Absolutely.
All playing out within this chain reaction of dependent origination.
Right.
And then there are different schools of thought about how all this works.
Exactly.
But the question remains, how do these seeds actually SPROU in a new life?
How do we get from these seeds to a new being?
What happens after we, kick the bucket?
That is the question.
Well, we're going to have to find out the answer to that in part 2.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned.
Stay with us.
All right, so we're back.
Back for more.
And we're talking about how those seeds of consciousness actually sprout into a new life.
It's like those blueprints coming to life,
Oh, okay, so it's not enough that they just exist. They
Yeah.
have to be, activated somehow.
Exactly.
And what activates them?
It's a complex interplay of causes and conditions.
Sounds familiar.
Right.
Are we back to that dependent origination thing?
You got it.
Okay.
Each link in that chain sets up the conditions for the next one to emerge,
Okay.
ultimately leading to the birth of a new being.
And that new being is shaped by all those karmic seeds that they inherited.
Right. Their inclinations, their tendencies, even their physical form.
It's kind of mind-boggling to think about all the different factors that come into play.
Absolutely.
And this is just one interpretation, right?
Right. Different schools of Buddhist thought have their own perspectives on this.
And one thing that I noticed in these texts that you sent is that there's actually quite a bit of debate.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of debate.
And not everyone agrees.
No, they don't.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, for example, even the interpretation of dependent origination isn't set in stone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Different schools understand it differently.
Okay, so how do they understand that 12-link chain differently?
So some schools, like the Sarvastivadins,
Sarvastivadin.
they take a more literal approach.
Okay.
They see it as a very structured process with each link directly causing the next.
So A leads to B, leads to C, and so on.
Yeah, very strict cause and effect.
No room for deviation.
Right.
Okay.
But then you have other schools like the Yogacarans.
Yogacarans.
Yeah, and they have a more nuanced understanding.
Okay.
They see the links as being interconnected and mutually dependent.
Okay, so it's more like a web than a chain.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
So it's less about this linear progression and more about this dynamic interplay of causes and conditions.
So how do those different interpretations affect how each school views rebirth?
Well, the Sarvastivadins, with their focus on linear causation, they tend to see rebirth as like a more literal transfer of consciousness.
So like it's being passed along.
Yeah, like a relay race.
Okay.
But the Yogacarans, with their emphasis on interconnectedness, they see it more as a transformation.
Okay.
So it's not about this fixed entity being transferred.
Oh.
It's more like a continuum of consciousness that's constantly evolving.
So less about passing it along and more about recreating it.
You got it.
Wow. So even within Buddhist philosophy, there's all this incredible diversity of thought.
Absolutely. And it's not a simple or static system.
Right. It's alive. It's dynamic.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about dependent origination.
Yes.
And we've talked about consciousness.
Right.
And we've talked about karma.
Yeah.
And how those seeds get activated into a new life.
Absolutely.
But there's one more piece that I think we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
And that's those mental factors, those sitaskata.
Yes, those are crucial
Okay.
for understanding how our minds work and how they impact the whole process of rebirth.
So these sitaskata are directly connected to the Tenhetsu, right? Those driving forces behind the chain reaction of dependent origination.
Right. It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all coming together.
It's a beautiful web.
So can you give us some examples of these sita saskara?
Sure. So some of the key ones include greed, hatred, and delusion.
Oh, those sound familiar.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Yeah, and those aren't exactly positive qualities.
No, they're considered unskillful.
Because they lead to suffering.
They do. They lead to suffering, and they keep us bound to the cycle of rebirth.
So if we understand these saskara, we can start to understand how our own thoughts and emotions are creating the seeds that we carry with us.
Exactly.
So it's not just about accepting whatever karma we've inherited.
Right. You can actually change it.
Okay, so how do we change it?
That's where practices like meditation and mindfulness come in.
Oh, okay.
They're tools for cultivating more skillful mental states.
Okay.
Like generosity, loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom.
So we can train our minds to plant better seeds.
Yes, exactly.
Seeds that will lead to more positive experiences.
And ultimately to liberation.
So it's hopeful.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
Absolutely.
So even though rebirth might seem like this predetermined destiny, it's actually a dynamic process that we can influence.
You are not a victim of your past karma.
Right.
You have the power to shape your future.
That's amazing.
It's a beautiful teaching.
It is.
And it really highlights the importance of understanding consciousness.
Right.
Is it a cause? Is it a result? Or is it both?
Wait, haven't we already talked about that?
We have.
I thought we covered the different interpretations.
But as we go deeper into these texts, the nuances become even more apparent.
Yeah, so what are some of the different perspectives?
So some schools argue that consciousness is primarily a result,
Okay.
a product of our past karma, and the conditions that give rise to a new life.
So we're kind of at the mercy of our past actions.
Not entirely, because you're always creating new karma.
Right.
But other schools emphasize the causal role of consciousness,
Okay.
suggesting that it's not just a passive recipient, but an active force that shapes our experiences.
So our choices matter.
They do.
Okay.
And those choices, those conscious actions, create new karmic seeds that influence future lives.
So both, right. It's both shaped by past karma, A and D shaping future karma.
Exactly. It's a dynamic interplay.
So this whole debate about cause-result or both,
Yeah.
this has big implications for how we understand things like free will and responsibility.
Absolutely. It gets to the heart of the matter.
My brain is feeling a bit full right now.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's like I'm experiencing my own little dependent origination chain reaction up here.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful exploration.
So we've explored different interpretations of dependent origination.
Right.
We've looked at consciousness, karma,
Uh-huh.
how those seeds are activated in a new life,
Absolutely.
and the role of siddha saskara in all of this.
It's a lot.
But one question still lingers.
Okay. I'm listening.
How do these ancient texts address the process of those karmic seeds taking root and manifesting in a new life?
That's a great question.
And I guess we'll have to find out the answer to that in part 3.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive, and I am ready to find out how those karmic seeds actually sprout into a new life.
Well, it's definitely a journey of transformation.
No, it's not like instantaneous.
No, it's an unfolding.
Okay.
And it happens over time, influenced by all sorts of conditions.
So those karmic seeds need the right environment to take root and flourish.
You could think about it like that.
Like a plant needing the right soil and sunlight and all of that.
Exactly. And the texts describe this process as a germination.
Okay.
But those conditions are provided by, you guessed it,
Dependent origination.
that 12-link chain reaction.
That's right. It always comes back to that.
It's the foundation.
Okay, so how do those 12 links actually contribute to the emergence of a new life?
Well, the first link, ignorance, is like the starting point.
Okay.
It's that fundamental misunderstanding of reality
Right.
that leads to attachment and craving.
Okay.
And that creates fertile ground for those karmic seeds to take root.
So ignorance is like the soil.
You could say that.
Okay, and then the second link is karmic formations.
Right, those are the actions that we perform.
Okay.
And these actions driven by ignorance are what actually create the seed.
So our actions are the seeds being sown into the soil of ignorance.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about consciousness? Where does that fit in?
Consciousness is the seed.
Oh, wow.
It's the potential for a new life carried forward from past lifetimes,
Right.
shaped by the karma we've accumulated.
So those seeds, they carry the imprint of our past actions.
Right, it's like a blueprint.
Okay, so we've got the soil of ignorance, the seeds of our actions, and the potential for life represented by consciousness.
Right.
How do those seeds actually sprout?
That's where the remaining links in the chain come into play.
Okay.
They create the conditions for those seeds to germinate and grow.
So give me some examples.
We're talking about things like name and form, the six sense faculties, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, becoming birth, and ultimately aging and death.
Wow. So it's really like this intricate dance.
That's a whole ecosystem coming into being.
It is.
Each step is essential, setting the stage for the next.
So it's not just like a physical birth.
No, it's more than that.
It's like this whole unfolding.
Exactly.
That extends beyond a single moment in time.
It's the emergence of a whole life.
With all of its experiences.
Joys, sorrows, and ultimately its impermanence.
So why are some beings born as humans, while others are born as animals or insects or even, those beings in the hell realms?
That's a question that's fascinated people for a long time.
Yeah.
And the texts suggest that karma shapes the conditions of rebirth.
Okay.
And the quality of our actions, both mental and physical, creates a kind of karmic momentum.
So it's not just how much we do, but the intention behind our actions.
Absolutely. The state of mind we're in when we act.
Okay.
And actions driven by greed, hatred, and delusion tend to create a heavier karmic momentum.
And that could lead to rebirth in the lower realms.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Where suffering is more prevalent.
But actions motivated by generosity, kindness, and wisdom create a lighter, more positive karmic momentum. And that could lead to rebirth in the higher realms or even a human rebirth.
It's all about the quality of our actions.
So karma is kind of setting us on a trajectory.
In a way, yeah.
But it's not fixed.
No, it's not a deterministic system.
Okay.
There are countless factors at play, and there's always room for change.
That's good to hear, because it means that we can actually influence our future.
Exactly, through our actions and through cultivating those skillful mental states.
It's not all predetermined.
Not at all. We have the power to shape our own path.
This is amazing, this whole concept of rebirth and consciousness and karma.
It's a profound teaching.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the most important question is this. If our actions today are planting the seeds for future lives, what kind of seeds are you sowing right now?
That's a powerful question to reflect on.
Yeah, it really makes you think about your choices and your motivations.
And the impact you're having on the world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into Buddhist philosophy.
It's been a pleasure.
And we hope it's inspired you to keep exploring these profound ideas.
And until next time, may your journey be filled with wisdom, compassion, and the seeds of positive transformation.